Howdy folks, welcome back to the shop. I have not built anything since the first of last summer and I'm super stoked to get started. Today I'm going to build a monitor cabinet for my office desk. This is the desk that I built actually last summer. So if you want to see how I built that desk, click on the card right here. For this build, I'm going to venture into some fine woodworking joinery. That's right, no pocket holes. Yeah, I know, I'm sorry. But I gotta learn somehow, so what better time than now? Okay, for this monitor, I'm going to use actually scrap material I've had left over from other projects. I'm going to use oak plywood, I'm going to use oak hardwoods, and I'm going to use poplar for the drawer boxes. I'm also going to jump on the Total Boat train. I have all my buddies on YouTube. They're all using the Total Boat Halcyon. So I'm going to try that today. I'm not very good at finishing, so let's hope I don't screw this up that bad. As always, I will have plans available on my website. I will also have links to all the materials and tools used in this video in the description below. I'm so glad you guys are here. Go ahead and take your jacket off, kick your feet up, and enjoy the video, and let's get started. I got new video lights. So dramatic. Thank you guys for joining me again on a super fancy build. I'm using pure bond oak plywood and oak hardwood. Also, the drawer parts are made out of poplar. All of this material is leftover scraps from other projects. We are going to first break down a half sheet of plywood on the table saw. And you notice this super fancy push stick. James King from King's Fine Woodworking built that and gave it to me as a gift. And I'm incredibly appreciative. Thank you, James. And next I'm going to cut all these smaller pieces to final length with the miter gauge. This is a Craig miter gauge. And I wasn't very happy with it when I first got it, but I used it with this whole project and it's starting to grow on me. And now it's time for the super safety tip of the day. If you notice, I do have a stop block clamped to my fence. This is to keep the piece of wood away from the fence and binding up in the blade. Now I'm going to take the longer pieces over to the miter saw and cut them to final length. You notice this is a climb cut. This is not a super safety tip. So if you're not comfortable with that cut, please do not attempt that at home. Also notice that I let the miter saw blade come to a full stop before raising the arm. With the table saw unplugged, I'm going to switch out the rip blade for the dado stack. The dado stack will be set to 3/4 of an inch because pure bond plywood is actually 3/4 of an inch. And with the magic of video editing, it does not show me actually dropping the arbor nut into my saw and into my dust collection hose and spending an hour trying to get it out and cussing a lot. And now I'm going to butt up my auxiliary fence up to the blade and micro adjust it so it's perfect. So the two outside pieces will receive rabbets on the top and bottom, and the middle dividers will receive a rabbet just on the bottom. Next, we're going to mill out some dados for the middle dividers. Man, that dado fit is so satisfying. Yay, sanding. Said no one ever. I'm going to go ahead and sand all the pieces up to 180 grit before it's assembled because it has a lot of tight spaces and will be virtually impossible to sand afterwards. I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill into the dados because this will make it a lot easier to line up the countersinks on the opposite side. I debated whether or not to plug these countersinks, but I decided against it because one, the material is only 3/8 of an inch thick, plus it's going to go in my office, so you'll not be able to see it from the left and right. You'll be looking at it straight ahead. So next we're going to run a couple of lines of glue into the dados. Then the dividers are placed into the dados and flushed up. And then we're going to turn its piece on its backside and we're going to screw the dividers in from the top. I am using 1 1/4 inch spack screws here. These are self-tapping screws that don't really require a pre-drilled hole if you're drilling into something like plywood. I will have a link for these screws, the tools, and all the materials in this video in the description below. Just like before, glue and screws are used to attach the rabbets on the sides into the top. Now on to attaching the bottom piece of each cabinet. If your dados and rabbets are cut correctly, this piece should just drop in and it will square up your cabinet, making it very strong. Nailed it. After you attach all the pieces, make sure you use a damp rag to clean up all the glue squeeze out, or you'll have a mess to clean up afterwards. With the base cabinet construction done, we're going to move forward and start working on the trim slash face frames, whatever you want to call it. It's not really a traditional face frame, but we're just going to tack it and glue it in place. Make a reference mark with a pencil, and then we're going to use glue and pin nails to tack it in place while the glue dries. First pro tip of the day, make sure your air compressor has enough pressure in it to drive the pin nails all the way through the oak and not out through the sides like I did here. So I'm going to have to remake this piece. And after you correct your mistake with the air compressor, go ahead and work your way down the cabinet, marking each piece with a reference mark and then tacking it in place with some glue. I like to leave these pieces a little long and then sneak up on it with the miter saw so you can get a good tight fit. And if you want to see some more shenanigans and antics, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and tag that notification bell. Then you get to see all the shenanigans you want to. Wee little shenanigans. And moving on from our Super Troopers references, we are going to start working on the top. And this is a new species of wood that was just discovered. This is called Paleheart. This really doesn't have anything to do with the shot being overexposed. Not one single bit. Okay, give me a break. I just got some new video lights and I'm trying to figure out how to use them. We're going to take the top piece and slide some 1/4 inch plywood under it because I want the trim to have a 1/4 inch lip on the bottom. We're going to attach the trim with glue and pin nails. We are going to leave the trim long and we're going to flush it up later. Use a couple clamps to secure that front trim while we attach the side trim. And this is the part of the video where I forgot I have a glue tray and glue brushes, so I'm going to use that to attach the side trim. And next we're going to secure the side trim with some long 50-inch parallel clamps. I'm going to let this dry overnight. And once that dries, we're going to use a saw to flush up the excess trim. I really need a new flush cut saw. This thing is really awkward and weird and it's way too big. Now it's time to add some of the decorative touches. I'm going to add a 1/2 inch round over to the top of the trim. This Milwaukee trim router is still really incredible. I do have a review video for this router. Click on the card right here. Yay, more sanding. Sweet. And one thing of note here, I'm going to use the sander to ease the edges on the bottom of the trim. The trim is too narrow to safely use the router on. And now I'm going to take the base cabinet and the top over to the table and we are going to attach it. I'm not going to use glue here because I want the ability to take the top off of the base cabinet to apply finish. I highly recommend this right angle drill attachment from Milwaukee. This thing is a lifesaver. I will have a link to purchase in the description below. And now we're going to move on to drawer assembly. I'm going to build the drawers out of poplar. I was going to use lock rabbet joints, but then I decided on pocket holes because I basically forgot that I was going to use lock rabbets and went ahead and did pocket holes. Does anybody ever feel like when you're pushing a piece of wood through your table saw that you're playing pool? Because the bridge I make when I play pool is exactly the same thing you see here. Maybe it's just me. I don't know. Put a comment down below and did you feel the same way? So I'm going to break out the miter gauge again, and we're going to cut all the drawer parts to length. I'm actually thinking about getting a different miter gauge. Tell me in the comments below what you would recommend or what you use. I'm really going to start just editing out sanding portions of the video because it's putting me to sleep. Okay, funny story. I was cleaning out the shop before I started this project, and the pocket hole jig decided to jump off the table and fall on the ground, and the right cabinet broke off. And apparently the screws broke off on the jig itself, and basically this pocket hole cabinet thing is ruined. So for a future video, we're going to design a new one, and hopefully we'll have that out soon. And so what is the redneck going to do? We'll just screw it to the table itself. That's fine. It's fine. It's all fine. Okay, so the setup for this pocket hole jig for 1/2 inch material, we're going to set the height to 1/2 inch, and then we're going to use 1 1/4 inch on the stop collar, and then we're going to use 1 inch screws. This will give you the perfect depth. Next, we're going to cut out grooves for the bottoms. I'm using a flat top grind clean spore blade here, and we're going to make 2 passes to cut out the 1/4 inch groove. Next, I'm going to use these little T-track stops to square up the cabinet and then use a clamp, and then we're going to screw everything together. Yep, your shop time is all about small victories. And you notice the back piece of the drawer box is actually shorter than the front piece. The back piece goes up to the groove, and this is so we can actually slide the 1/4 inch bottom in from the back, and then we will secure it with screws. I like to use a auxiliary fence on the table saw so that the 1/4 inch plywood will not slide up under the fence. When you are securing the bottom piece to the drawer, make sure you pre-drill because that poplar will split. I'm using new screws from Rockler. These are the Cabinet Hardware 1/2 inch screws. Cool thing about these screws is that they have a square head or a Robertson drive if you're from Canada. And then we're going to install the drawer slides. I'm using the T-track hole to flush out the front of the slide and the front of the box. This worked very well. I would recommend installing the drawer slides while the cabinet is disassembled. The space inside of the cabinet is very tight, and this was incredibly complicated to do. But I am using 1/2 inch spacers to lift up the drawer slide. The drawer fronts are going to have a 1/16 of an inch reveal, so I'm going to use a laser measure to get an accurate measurement. And then I'm going to take a ruler and I'm going to find the center of the drawer front and drill a hole for the hardware. To attach the drawer fronts, I'm going to drill large holes in the front and then attach it from the back side. This way I can adjust the drawer fronts. I learned this trick from Brad Rodriguez at Fix This Build That. As you notice, I did not get footage of putting the bevel on the drawer fronts. It's basically become my trademark because I forgot to record it. I had to fiddle with the drawer fronts to get the spacings evenly, but once I got there, I had secured it with a screw through the front and then secured it in the back. Now the 2 front large holes will allow you to move the drawer front around a little bit. And then the doorknob is installed with a supplied screw. Next, I'm going to cut out 2 pieces of poplar. These are going to be installed on the back of the cabinet as a nailer to attach the cabinet to the desk. Then I'm going to take a wood block and tap the nailer flush with the back of the cabinet. Then I'm going to get a pin nailer and tack it in place so it does not move when you install the pocket hole screws. The last thing I'm going to do before finishing is drill a hole with a Forstner bit. This is going to allow all the monitor cables to run behind the cabinet. I'm going to use a Fuji Semi Pro 2 to spray on the Halcyon. I think this sprayer might be a little underpowered because I was having some issues trying to get it to come out. But I think I misread the instructions. It says to apply a coat, wait an hour, apply another coat. I think I misread that to apply 5 coats in 1 hour. So it got a little dark. And that's okay. Failure is the greatest teacher. So I will learn my lessons and I'll apply them to the next time I spray. And the last thing to do is install the stand onto the desk. I'm going to center the stand and then we're going to mount it using the back nailers into the lip of the desk. And if you remember on part 2 of the desk build, I put strips of poplar on that back lip just so it can accept screws. And while you watch me put my office back together, I want to give a big shout out to Caddle. Caddle is one of my favorite local Birmingham bands, and they were gracious enough to let me use their music in my video. I will have links to purchase their music plus the copyright information in the description below. And I want to thank everybody for watching this video. If you think I deserved it, please go ahead and subscribe and hit that notification bell. Also, pound that like button. And until the next video, cheers.